So welcome. Thank you for joining me for this short 45 minutes to an hour topical workshop. These are things that we like to do to connect everybody across the country and just to talk about some things that maybe aren't quite as typical in the normal educational content. And so when Katie asked me what I wanted to do, I said, one of the things I think would help is, most of you know, if not those of you that are new, I'm a teacher. I'm a college professor. It's what I do for my typical day job. And so I teach adults new complex skills all the time. And I said, there's some really cool things about how we learn that I think would be important and transferable to what you guys go through and what I went through even as a student with trading. So this is not going to be an end-all be-all. Guys, I could spend all day teaching you strategies about how we learn, but I wanted to open up some concepts that I see when I talk to new traders and when traders are coming on board that I think will help. I also think this will help maybe for some of you who have started your trading education. You've been around maybe for a little bit, but you feel like you're kind of stuck or you don't know which direction to kind of go. So today's going to be a little bit more conceptual, but we're going to also talk about some concrete things that you can do within your trading education. I welcome questions. I welcome comments. I'll watch the chat box, and we'll see how this goes. Okay. So I'm going to turn off my video. It'll save some bandwidth. It also helps with the way the recording works. So when they sent out the outline for the bullet points that I was talking about, these are pretty important. Now, you won't see that I address these maybe specifically in the exact same words you see here, but you're going to see the concepts coming forward. What is a skill? How does it connect to trading education? So one of the things that I want to make a comment about right now for that is because I'm going to be talking about how we as human beings, and maybe even more importantly, we as adult human beings, how we learn a skill. And a skill is actually a behavior, an applied physical behavior. Whereas when we think about knowledge and understanding, that's a mental element. You can't say, can you have mental skills? Yes, you can have study skills. But in trading, skill is a behavior that is a physical act of actually pushing the buttons, entering a trade, participating in the market. But the point I want to make here is it doesn't matter what the skill is. The concepts of how we learn as human beings, grounded in some pretty good educational science, can apply to any skill. So even though I'm going to show you some elements that come from more, I don't want to use, the word theoretical is not, from an academic perspective, I want you to know that I see it work and see it happen all day long. And it's actually one of the reasons why I teach the way I do and the other things that I do at TRADEway. So we will talk about the idea when it says best learning plan. Really what we're talking about there is the stages, and you're going to see those. That'll be a big piece of what I cover. It's what is the stages of learning and what are the steps that make learning happen in a way that skill can be developed. Okay. Will we need to watch the replay? I don't know. Or you said we will need to watch the replay. That's great. That's fantastic. That's, as a matter of fact, Michael and Patricia, that's one of the things about what TRADEway's invested in is an online education structure that allows, in your time, in your schedule, in your ability, in your pacing, to be able to move as fast or to repeat and go back and relearn and review education. Man, guys, when we used to only have the capacity of doing in-person events, I loved in-person events, but I also knew as an educator, it was not the most complete learning methodology because students would leave and although we'd have resources, we weren't going to be able to partner with them the same way we can with this phenomenal online educational platform that we have now. And we'll talk about some of the mistakes that are made, and maybe the word mistake here is too stringent. It's how do we get off the path? And I see a lot of new students, and you'll see that come forward, kind of stray off the path a little bit. And sometimes it can do more harm, both emotionally and to your learning. All we're going to do is get you back on the path. And then I think you guys will see some actionable steps. And here's why I designed today's little short topical workshop. to be more broad and less specific, although there will be actionable steps or phases or stages you can see, because as I look at the people that are in this room, I see some brand new traders, I see some intermittent traders, and I see some traders that have been on here, and they are very experienced traders. And they're going to be in a different stage of their learning. So I wanted something that was broadly applicable, but I guess my biggest audience that I want to touch in a way of meaningful, actionable planning is our newer traders, because that's where this process is most relevant, although we can always continue to learn. I am a lifelong learner. I'm a better trader now than I was 5 years ago. I was a better trader 5 years ago than when I started. Trading is a great example of a lifelong learning component. And then I will talk about how we transition knowledge to applications. That's what we were talking about. All right, so you guys can put some comments here in the chat box, not so much the Q&A box, the chat box, as we see this happen. So think about this conversation, and maybe even related to this picture that I put over here. Coach, hey guys, I know that all you guys know how to play basketball. You know, you've been playing basketball for a few years. You got some skills. I know you guys know how to play basketball. You know the rules. You studied and you kind of know the plays that we've talked about. You know, you could tell me on paper, and you could tell me what the plays are for and who goes where. You guys could all tell me that, and I think that's great. Thank you. So, you know, because you know the rules and you've been playing basketball for a while, I don't think we need to practice anymore. We got a game in a couple of weeks. You know, you guys know what we need to do. You know what our game plan is. So I don't really think that we need to practice. So please just show up for the game, be on time, make sure you're dressed right, got your shoes, everything ready to go, and everything's going to be good. Okay. So, whoops, back up there. What do you guys think about this conversation? Okay. What do you think about this conversation? There's a reason why this conversation is up here. Anybody in the chat box? Any comments you want to think about this? Steve, fantastic. Are you nuts? Janet says practice makes perfect. Interesting there, Janet. We would probably say, and it's a great statement, absolutely accurate statement. I would say something about the quality of our practice helps develop skill, because we can practice and not necessarily practice effectively. Your motor skills will decrease. Yeah. So I guess for the most part, by a raise of hands, how many of you think that this is a good idea that the coach is talking about here? Hopefully we won't see too many hands raised. Or let me go the other way. How many of you think this isn't so good of an idea that the coach is advocating for the players? Okay, so yeah, absolutely. And it's not meant to be a ludicrous example, but in this conversation, you guys are all telling me we would not do this. Okay, and you'll see a purpose around that. All right, next conversation here. This is a teacher to her class. I could use my wife, who's a middle school math teacher. So this is Monday. Class, we're going to have a class on how to multiply fractions on Thursday morning. Okay, so we're gonna do a class. I'm gonna teach you how to multiply fractions. But here's a homework assignment that I'm gonna give you right now. This homework assignment that I want you to do is on multiplying fractions. And I need you to complete this homework assignment tonight. And you need to turn it in tomorrow on Tuesday for a grade, okay? Now, we'll have the class on Thursday, and then I also want you to have planned, put in your schedule, that we will have the exam on multiplying fractions on Friday. Okay, now what comments do we have? All right, so as we look at this example, what comments? Now imagine if you're the student, okay? What do you think if you're the student? Okay, so Judas says there's no skills taught, okay? Not equipped with the right tools, okay? What else? I need help, okay? Panic, okay? So what's fundamentally wrong? Okay, so Doris, you got to a comment that's there that's kind of important, no time to learn. Set up for failure, okay? We'll get an F. Okay, so what's fundamentally wrong? Actions before education, Janet, that's a good way of putting that. We look at this and we know automatically that this is truly a ludicrous, ineffective way of developing skill and knowledge, or knowledge in this case. Now, In this case, we are talking about a skill, but it's a mental skill. It's not a physical skill. Now, Billy, hold on to, or not hold on, but Billy, your statement is a statement that I'm going to come back to in just a minute. Billy's statement was testing before training. Okay, testing before training. All right, last conversation piece. Here we go. Now over here we got stock trading. So new trader, hey, you know what? I went to this awesome weekend course on stock trading. I even learned how options work, and I signed up for their educational program, and they are a phenomenal Christian company. They have awesome coaches. They have awesome traders. They have this really awesome trader and trainer named Ross. No, his name was really Jeffrey and Jared and Ben and Pete and all the other coaches. So I started on the courses a couple of weeks ago, and it was kind of neat because the courses were online, so they could fit into my schedule pretty effectively. Really cool is I could kind of skip around, and I could even jump into a couple of the different courses just to kind of see what's going on. But I did complete the options course. So, you know, I've been learning a little bit, and I got my brokerage account set up and out it funded. So I got my money in there. I'm ready to go away, and this is going to be awesome to start making money. And I'm going to be growing this account pretty good. They've shown me that this account can grow really, really pretty quick. And I'm planning on putting on my first trades this week. Okay. So what do you think about this? And actually, this may be more common than you might think. Okay. So now when you look at this, sequence is okay. Premature, sequence is okay. Getting education, getting knowledge, doing some studying. Okay. So what is at the core of all these examples, some a little more extreme than others, is that they tend to violate some fundamental principles of how we learn as human beings and how we translate information into deeper understanding, and then eventually how we take understanding, which is a mental process, and how we apply it to the physical skill base that we need to do. So, but you would be surprised the number of students that it may have talked to, especially early on, and that's why I wanted this example to be here, is because if you're new with TRADEway or you're new in your training, and maybe it's not even so new, maybe you've been here 6 months, I do want you to know that we often will see that students try and accelerate the process. And in essence, back to kind of the math example, they want to take the test before they've done the homework. Now, nobody likes homework. We grow up, most of us would have probably passed on doing the homework when we were growing up. And yet there's this forced practice through homework that's core to our educational component of developing the skill of learning. But in trading and as human beings, and definitely as adults, we feel like we have control. Guys, there's a market open right now. Any of us can go out and with actually a very minimal amount of information, put on a trade in the market. Now, the outcome of that trade could be very speculative, and the probability of the trade working could really be speculative if we don't have the right skill sets and we don't have the right learning. So that's where I'm basing these next few elements around. So you guys are all on the same page with me. These examples are examples of a poor learning process. So what's at the core of all of these examples? The core of all of these examples is that there is a natural progression, and actually this is even biblical, and we talk about this, of knowledge to understanding, standing to practice, and practice to skill. Now, skill is the application piece, and some of you may have heard me say this before. There is a big difference between knowledge and understanding, and let me use the idea of a Bible verse to kind of illustrate this. To me, the concept of knowledge to a Bible verse would be that you could quote the verse. You've memorized it. You have the information in your brain. Matter of fact, through the Awanas program at our church, I have seen a 9-year-old boy come up to the podium in front of 500 people, quite remarkable to do that, take the mic and simply start quoting Philippians, word for word, verse for verse. Quite amazing to see this 9-year-old boy have biblical memorization far superior to mine. Phenomenal knowledge at the age of 9. Now, the idea of understanding, though, goes deeper. Do I truly know what is going on? What does the message mean? The why does it work? I don't know if that 9-year-old boy has the deeper understanding of those verses, But in a biblical perspective, I may be able to recite the verse from memory. Do I understand what the verse means? Do I understand what God's word was telling us in guiding us to do? Do I understand why it's there? I may not always agree or think it's easy to agree with it, but do I understanding the wisdom that is within the words? And in trading education, the way we structured it, there is a why, maybe not the only why, but there is a why around the education that we teach. So knowledge and understanding are very, very different. And then Janet, you kind of take it to the next step here, which is practice and skill. And you used the right word there. Understanding helps application. Now we come back to our Bible verse. I can memorize it. I can quote it. I may even tell you that I have a good understanding of it, but do I actually apply it? Can I apply it? Do I apply it? That's the real skill component that comes in. And with trading, there are elements around skill and application that aren't just fundamentally around the knowledge. Do you know how your brokerage account really works? Do you know how to maneuver through your stock charting program in a way that you can use those pieces of technology and those tools that we use in trading? Can you use them effectively? If not, you may have your foundational pieces of knowledge and you may be ready to go, but there's also some other elements around the application and skill of trading that you also need to practice. So learning, and more importantly, the developing of a skill, is a process with purposeful steps. And there's a time component to those as well. So I like this slide. This is a slide that we actually show to our students when they start in our physical therapy program, and we let them know that we're going to be intertwining their education across several of these elements concurrently across their education. But we're looking for knowledge in the beginning, and with knowledge, we need training. And then along with the training and knowledge, we're looking to actually learn, which is that deeper understanding piece. But then we also have to have some experience, some application, some practice. And with experience and application and practice, which in trading is a physical act, we make mistakes, we correct our mistakes. That'll be a big part of what I'm going to show you here in a minute. We develop skills, and hopefully we develop and work towards competency in those skills, and therefore improving our ability. And then the whole process continues over and over again with growth. So there's an intersection between many of these elements that are quite important. I love this statement by Helen Keller. There are no shortcuts to any place that is worth going. Now, I thought about this a lot for this particular topical workshop. I do believe that there can be different paths. We can look at a map and potentially take a different route, but those routes are still going to be well defined. And ultimately, when we talk about shortcuts, we're talking about basically skipping things that are fundamentally important. And that's what I don't want you guys to do. So learning begins with a goal in mind. Back to this picture that I have here. Learning begins with a goal in mind, the ultimate destination. So all of us came to TRADEway with an idea that we were introduced to the concept of trading in a way that we knew what our ultimate destination was. We wanted to learn to become effective, consistent, successful traders, to be able to use the blessings that come from trading and the ability to be able to make money in the market, to use that money as a tool to fulfill the missions that we have in our life through family, through church, through our community, whatever missions those happen to be. So we had a common destination. Now from there, learning is a pathway to develop the skills to meet the goal. Okay. And this is where sometimes the pathway stops. So where does it start, guys? I love this picture. We look at kids and we look at our own kids, our own grandkids and everything, and we know about skill acquisition, and this makes sense. We know that they're fundamentally in the beginning, but we associate age with being in the beginning. So now we accelerate forward to us and we talk about trading. Well, guys, in our trading world, as we all come into trading as adults, we are just like the kids in this picture. We are in the beginning of our journey. We've accomplished much in our life. We have control of many aspects of our life. We've learned many things in our life, but in many cases, for most people, trading is a completely new learning process, skill process, and an ever challenging process because the market changes. So we all start here. And that's what I want us to make sure that we give ourselves, our new students here, give ourselves grace to understand that although we may be far older than the representation on this picture in our skill sets and learning, unless you've already come in with some financial or trading background before you join TRADEway, this is where we all start and we develop from here. So learning is a pathway. Now, I love this graphic because look at the first component of it, attitude. Guys, I will tell you very poignantly, both in my students here and also in you guys as traders, oftentimes when we run into obstacles, as a matter of fact, when kids are learning, when a kid tries to learn to ride a bike and they fall off, they don't give up in most cases, they get back on. Adults tend to look at lack of success in a different way. They expect success in a different way. And I want us to think more like kids and not like adults, but attitude is powerful. Information comes in. This is the acquisition of knowledge. Love this word here. There is no skill that is created without practice. Okay. Now, practice should be a lower real risk environment. Back to the coaches telling the students they didn't want, or the basketball players, they don't need to practice. You guys thought that was crazy because that was a low stakes application of the skill and the knowledge. Practice is literally lower stakes, repetitive application of the knowledge for the purpose that when the stakes are higher or the real game is in place, i.e. the real market, we've shown ourselves by the practice and the repetition how to do it, how it works. We've made corrections, we've made adjustments. So I'm going to make this statement very boldly. I think one of the greatest detriments to students learning to trade is they spend too much time wanting to play the game and take the test, live trading, and not nearly enough time practicing the skill. Guys, I've been trading in total for 15 years. I've been trading with TRADEway since 2010, and I still do paper trades. I may do 3 to 4 times the number of paper trades that I do live trades because it's a new market conditions all the time. I value tremendously. I know people on here who at one point in their careers took it upon themselves to understand the value of practicing the skills that they're learning far greater, and then revealed a few months later how powerful their trading improved because of the practice they did. You can practice in the market with relatively low risk. And I know so many students that don't do that, and I ask why, and it's like, well, because there's nothing in it. That means you're only looking at the money side, and you've missed the whole purpose of practice. You missed the whole purpose of practice. So think about this pathway as we go through some other elements, and maybe even think about yourself and what you do. For those of you that have learned your coursework, you could probably tell me what an option is. Those of you that are in spreads, you could tell me what a spread is. You might even be able to tell me how you'd set up your option and set up your spread. Ask yourself, how much time do I use, or how much time do I spend pushing the buttons, practicing trades in a live market with the most environment that I can with little to no risk on board? And if that's not much, I'm going to encourage you that this is a place, no matter where you are, that you can improve. Now, notice what happens with practice. New skills develop. New skills do not always develop just because of more information. Let me repeat that again. New skills do not develop just because of more information. Now, improved skills can occur with improvement in knowledge and information, but really to apply them to skills, we've got to practice them. And with new skill development becomes more practice, and with more practice becomes new skill development. So eventually you get to this stage. So guys, if I backed up and I showed you this chart, this little picture again, this development to this development. Now this is Rory McIlroy, one of the best golfers in the world. Guys, this is a very good golfer. As a matter of fact, in a tournament not too many weeks ago in the FedEx Cup, he was behind by 6 shots going into the last day of the golf tournament, and he ended up winning the golf tournament. And guys, this is a golf tournament that the single payout for this golf tournament was $18 million for the one. Now, it was the one golf tournament, but the award of the $18 million is because he had the most points across the whole year. The difference between first place and second place in this particular tournament, which was the culmination of a year's worth of work, was $11 million. You saw phenomenal professional golfers in an environment of a high stakes situation, making amazing mistakes and sloppy play. The person that came in second in this tournament came into the last day of the tournament 6 strokes ahead. And 6 strokes is a monumental amount of strokes for world-class professional golfers. 6 strokes ahead, and this guy right here, by his mental toughness all week or all day long, chipped away, and ended up winning. Now, we may not be to this level in our training or in our trading in the future, but everybody can excel and succeed and progress to a level that they can learn to trade. But this is just, it was amazing to watch this because it was such a good example of, even with great skill and great learning in an environment of pressure and emotion and stress, which the market is, even guys, I've been trading a long time. Like I said, I still don't like losing, and I still get the emotional knot in my stomach when trades aren't working right. That's part of that learning, as well as working towards emotional stability. Now, you guys, this slide I'm going to move forward with, but so the way our minds work, this is one structure, it's more than a theory, but look at how we move. We have unconscious, unaware of, incompetence. We don't have much skill yet. We're unaware of this skill, and we really kind of lack proficiency. This is us as beginning traders. We are all unconsciously incompetent. Now, we can accelerate through these levels, but we all start in the same place for the most part. And even if you came to TRADEway with other trading skills, at some point, we were all beginners. Then we kind of move to conscious incompetence. We're aware of the skill. This is what I would call a stage where we've got some knowledge. We've learned how stock patterns work. We've learned about support and resistance. We can draw some lines. We've learned about market tone. We might even know how our brokerage account works. We've got some skill. We've got some knowledge. So I'll call that the consciousness component. The incompetence component comes from the fact that we're not yet proficient. And I want everybody to hear this. This is going to be really important for the next stage that I'm going to talk about, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I don't expect you. The functional ability of learning a skill states that in the beginning, we're not really good at the skill, even while we are acquiring the knowledge. That is where the concept, and Jeffrey talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and you guys have mentioned it here. That is where we practice. That is the homework. We are working to build the skill proficiency. But if we accelerate too fast and our goal is only to make money, I was talking to some students this weekend. Guys, the students that are in my PT program or in a doctoral PT program, before they've gotten here, they've already had to have a 4-year degree. Okay, so they have invested the time, the effort, the learning, and oh, by the way, they have invested the tuition to learn to become what they want to become, a physical therapist, through 4 years of undergraduate degree and now another 31 months. They've paid, think about college. Many of you have gone to college or you've sent your children through college. We pay all the tuition up front. We invest the finances, but we don't look for the return on investment of the educational component until after we go into it after we've already learned the knowledge, hopefully the understanding, and develop the skill. Then we can go out and, quote, get the job or participate in the skill that we've been working towards. When we join a company like TRADEway or any other educational company, we expect that we invest the money now and I need to be able to make the money back now. But that's not the way learning and skill acquisition works. We can accelerate it. It's not going to take 3 years, 4 years to start to earn that money back, but it can't be learn on Friday, earn on Tuesday. It can't be learn on Friday, earn on Tuesday. Now, until you maybe move to conscious competence. You're able to use the skill, but you still have to work at it, okay? And then finally, you can get to the point, this is where I look at Jeffrey, Jared, Ben. I'm pretty close to this, I would say as well, and I see some people here that are here. it's not that every trade's going to work, but we can walk into the trade and know this is the setup. I can execute the trade. I know exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. It doesn't mean it will work. And if it doesn't work, I know what to do. And if it does work, I know what to do. That is what I would call unconscious competence. This is the real acquisition of skill. Performing a skill becomes almost automatic. Again, in trading, it doesn't mean that every trade works. So where are you in these 4 stages? If you're new, but at least you've been introduced. Matter of fact, most of you didn't even know the things you knew from your step 1 class. You were unconsciously incompetent. So now all of a sudden, TRADEway opened up the idea, wow, look at what's out there, and wow, there are some skills that make this work. I see some people in here that I definitely know you're over here on conscious competence, and I see people in here that I think you're at unconscious competence or unconscious competence as well. Know your stage. Give yourself the grace to understand which stage of learning you are in. Okay. So this is the platform that I want you guys to think about, though, and this is where you can think about the number of resources we have, the number of ways that we touch or can touch together with, or get together with each other and touch each other from an educational perspective. So this is another way of looking at stages of learning. And this is the one that fundamentally I see and I apply to the education that I do with our students. And I can easily see how this transitions into TRADEway. We have cognitive, which cognitive goes with the idea of being mental. It also has to do with how we associate errors and mistakes. And then we have associative, which means we're developing skill, and ultimately we get to autonomous, and maybe the word expert is maybe too strong here, but it's autonomous. And I want you to see how these things work. Now, these stages apply to all types of learning, and they go beyond just knowledge and having, and you have to have an application or a skill. Knowledge and ideally understanding is a prerequisite for these stages of application. You're going to see the description of these 3 stages are skill-based. And I will say that you need some knowledge. You do need knowledge and understanding before you move to skill. So study, then practice. So think about the difference of a game show like Jeopardy, which is purely knowledge-based. You know, you've had to study. Somebody goes on Jeopardy, they've studied, and they can play that game from a purely knowledge perspective, and then how fast they can click a button. And compare that to the game of golf, or definitely I don't call it a game, the application of trading. Golf and trading need to take that knowledge, but there has to be an application base. You have to be able to play the game. They're typically very different elements of your training. Notice that I didn't say playing well, okay, but yet. So we're developing skills, and there's levels of skill. These stages absolutely apply to the skill of stock trading and option trading. Not understanding these stages and that they're actually present can actually cause a lot of frustration. So what we as coaches and trainers see often when somebody is not having the performance that they want in trading, they're frustrated. It's because they're looking at the end goal and they haven't maybe given themselves the grace or the perspective of understanding that they're still in their learning phase. So many of you may have heard me say before, I believe trading falls into 2 categories. The first category is trading to learn. And that means practice. That means paper trading. That means working on my platform, making sure I know where the buttons are. That means going out and doing paper trades. That means going out and doing very small money trades, because now I got some real money at risk. And Jeffrey talked about that with paper trading a couple weeks ago. Once you have proven to yourself competency in the skill by practice in a real environment, but with minimal risk, now you can start to move to the stage of from trading to learn to trading to earn. Now the idea is that I'm trading with competency, with better skill, with a good plan, with more confidence. And now I'm looking to risk more money for the potential to make more money, and now get a reimbursement on my investment of time, energy, and money to trade. Too many students want to jump too quickly to the trading to earn phase, and they have not done the work and developed in themselves the knowledge and understanding in the trading to learn phase. And in my opinion, that is a recipe, not necessarily for disaster, although it could be, but a recipe of frustration, a recipe of emotional stress, and a recipe of not being successful and wanting to shut down instead of moving forward because the focus was on the wrong element of your learning phase. Okay? By the way, this is a way you learn most of the skills in your life. The only other option to this is the way education typically works, is trial and error. Can we work with trial and error? Can we learn from trial and error? Sure. But trial and error can be really difficult and really expensive with trading. I would actually say if you're trying to jump to the trading to earn phase and you haven't spent the time in the trading to learn phase, you have basically moved over to the trial and error phase. And that's not the way TRADEway designed the education. So here we go. Stages of development. Trading is a lifelong skill. We never really reach the endpoint because the market is always changing. So think about the stage that you are in and then plan for how to move to the next stage. That's what your coaches, your trainers, your resources, our market corners, our online study groups, that's why they were developed. And that's how they're designed to be implemented. So number one, the cognitive beginner stage. Now, again, this is skill. The performer is in this, and guys, the words I have here, and this will be a busy slide. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of information on the slide because I know people like to take screenshots, and I'll tell you when it's over. And then you can take a screenshot and you'll have all the information on one piece. This is a terrible slide in its design because I would never want this amount of information on one slide. But I know you guys like summary slides, so I built it knowing that it's not the best way I would like to do it. So the information that's here is the foundational principles. This is how professional sports athletes are developed. This is how high-level skill and technicians. This is how physicians and surgeons and my physical therapist students, and this is how traders, we all go through the same stages. So when you're going to apply the skill of trading in the beginning, you are inconsistent. And by the way, you make many mistakes. This isn't me saying this. This is the fundamental skill development theory in place. You make mistakes. We come into trading thinking that we should be successful. We want to be successful. We don't give ourselves the grace and the understanding, because I've said people don't know how we learn, that mistakes are normal. One of the worst, and you will maybe hear some people say the worst thing in the world to happen is a trader that goes out there and their first 10 trades are successful because now they make it think it's easy. No, they probably got lucky. And that's not the way that it's going to work over the long term. So the performer is inconsistent and they make many mistakes. Great. And you do not always know why you made the mistake, and you don't necessarily know how to correct it. Now, this may sound familiar to some of you. You got into trade, you thought it worked right, it didn't work right. You don't know, was it a mistake? Did you miss something? And you don't know how to correct it. And one of the hardest things about trading is that you can still do everything right in a trade and it not work. So the outcome of a trading event can still have a negative component if we think about an expense or stopping it out as negative, yet everything was done right in the structure, setup, and application of the skill. So we don't know what the mistake was or if there was a mistake. And in this stage, the other thing is that it's okay. That's what I'm telling you, giving you permission to understand it's okay that you don't know how to correct it. So what do we do there? So the performer, that's you, that's me when it's a new skill. We require support from learning resources to discover the cause of the mistake, if there was one, and how to improve the skill, how to improve the skill in the future. This is why TRADEway invests so much time in coaching. This is why you now have online courses that you can go back and review. Notice the component. You have to have support resources in order to help you understand where the mistake was. One of the most valued things in TRADEway for new traders and new traders that come on board is they say they love the idea of coaching. And yet the coaches will tell me that one of the most underutilized elements in TRADEway is coaching. Well, guys, that's because you don't want to be vulnerable and show people that you're wrong, or you think you can figure it out on your own. I'm not quite sure why you don't use the coaches or market corners. I run market corners every week. I have a market corner tonight. And we open up every one of those market corners. Does anybody have questions? And I know in that room there are people that have questions. And they don't ask the questions. You are severely limiting your ability to accelerate forward in your learning when you do that, because those are the support and learning resources that are necessary to help discover the mistakes and how to improve the skill moving forward. What makes this skill in this stage move forward effectively is practice and repetition. It is key to the development of this stage. So if I ask someone, if I ask you, if I was talking in a one-on-one conversation, how much time do you spend learning around trading? How much time do you spend practicing trading? Not how much time do you spend making money in trading? And I believe that students spend too little time in the practice repetition phase. If you're at the point that you're using a small money trade, or even a larger money trade, great. Put on the real money trade if you're at that phase. But I can't trade all the stocks that are in good setups, and I want to learn from those. So I may have one real money trade on, and I might have 3 other paper trades on, so that I can learn from the practice of those other 3 trades, which accelerates my repetition number while also then still minimizing my risk. Note, and I mentioned it back up here, a trade does not have to work. A trade that does not work does not mean it was a mistake. You can do everything right in a trade and things change in the market and the trade didn't work out. We all go into trading understanding that from a cognitive level, but I don't know if we really understand it that, I might be thinking that if I get 6 out of my 10 trades for a profit, that's a good win-loss ratio. 7's fantastic. If I'm down there at 30%, though, I need some things that I need to address. Extremely important. In this stage, the performer needs support and help from external sources. And this is what I want you guys to really understand about this phase of a skill acquisition, which is where all of us go through eventually. It is really hard to progress out of the cognitive beginner stage into the next stages if you don't have external sources of support, review, information, coaching, those things. Because it's hard to fix what you do not know is wrong. So it creates an internal struggle. And I see a lot of students just not understand how they learn. And they're like, well, they showed me how to do it. I learned how to do it. I understand what I'm supposed to do, and yet it still didn't work. Okay, let's figure out if there's a reason why it didn't work. Then you move to the next phase, which is the associative phase. This is the next phase of cognitive skill development. How do you access the coaches? I'm new and I'm trying to figure out how I can get involved. You access coaches either by calling the phone number, or the easiest way, because it'll get sent to the right person. You just send a email to support@tradeway.com, put in the title line coaching, and the coaches will let you know exactly how the best way to get a hold of them is, and then they respond. So Mark, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it, because I guarantee that there was some other students out there that wanted to know how to do that. Associative phase, the performer begins to understand skill requirements and starts to become more consistent. You start to be able to understand, often with your own review, oh yeah, I missed that. You start to be able to see with review and study what mistake you may have made. Within their performance, there typically are fewer mistakes. And again, mistakes in trading would be those things that maybe we just missed. They didn't see a good, they didn't get a good buy point, or they were in a fear of missing out of the trade, so they went ahead and entered the trade and it wasn't at a good buy point. They didn't have a defined stop before they went into the trade because they didn't want to think about that, or I don't know why students don't have stops. But when it got, even if you did have a stop, when you got to that level, you chose, I think it's still going to turn around, or we start thinking about surely it's going to turn around at this point. So we start to break down our own plan. Okay, we knew what it was, but we didn't follow it, and that means you're in the associative phase. The performer can begin to evaluate their own performance and know how to correct it. Now guys, knowing how to correct the error and having the discipline to actually correct the error are 2 different things. But having the discipline to correct the error is not a learning or skill problem. That's a discipline problem. That's a personal integrity issue. And oh, by the way, if it's not working, the plan's not working, you ought to change the plan. You're also able at this point to have more complex information that you can process. Okay, we are constantly, Market Corners will go a little bit more in depth on concepts from the basic courses. We're always looking to expand our understanding of the amount of information around the market. But I don't need to understand everything about the market to be successful. I have some fundamental level of understanding I need to have, and my practice and the performance of my practice shows me if I have that. But as you grow, we want to also grow you in your depth of understanding around the market. And you start to be able to use internal feedback. You know where some of the mistakes are, the errors are. So now your own internal driving force. Okay, and I see people on here that I know they review. I'm just going to just say a couple names here because I know they're phenomenal traders and they make comments all the time. Gordon gives comment and feedback. Michael and Patricia, they give comment and feedback all the time. Well, guys, matter of fact, the fact that Gordon and Michael and Patricia are here in this webinar with the skills that they have just shows that they're constant lifelong learners. Okay, that's what's so powerful. Even though I think that they're at the last stage here, they're not in the associative stage. And that's the autonomous stage. And like I said, expertise is a strong word, but that's the word that goes with this. Now, the performer is more consistent and effective. By the way, it doesn't mean every trade works. Sorry for missing the parentheses. When a professional baseball player steps up into the batter's box, it does not mean that he makes a hit or gets on base every time. When a basketball player stands at a free throw line and they throw, and they've practiced with 20,000 free throws in their life, it doesn't mean that every free throw goes in the basket. But performance is more consistent and effective. They perform skills with more consistency and accuracy with less effort. It's easier to plan. We can see things quicker. Just because we've seen enough patterns and we have our plan, it's a little bit more, and that's why the phrase here is autonomous. Okay. Now, if a trade doesn't work, somebody that's in this phase can typically look at it and say, yeah, I knew going into it, I was pushing it. I knew I was bending the rule a little bit or pushing it outside or I made some adjustments. I knew it was a little bit more speculative or a little bit lower probability. They understood that going in. Okay. Now, every once in a while, we can be in this phase and be very, very successful. And Jeffrey talks about this with me on the Market Corners. He's like, I absolutely expected the market to do this. And guess what? The market did something different. Okay. The market did something different. That's the part of the market that is unpredictable. And you guys have heard me say this before. We are using historical information, technical analysis. In the current situation, the chart at the hard right edge plus the market tone right now, to predict and plan for a future event of which we have no control over. We have no control over the event. We do have control over how we react, respond, and manage that unpredictable event once we're in a trade. The greatest amount of control you will ever have is before you enter a trade. Once you enter a trade, you have no control of the outcome, but you can control how you respond, react, and manage the outcome of the trade. We are control freaks as human beings, and definitely as adults. Many of you, some of you work in jobs where you have to control the environment you work in tremendously, and therefore lack of control in an event really challenges you because it's not your personality and most of the things that you do every day. But that's one of the things that's needed on to be in trading. Or to be an investor, we can take the idea of trading and investing to that next level as well. We're still investing in things that are not known in the future, but we need to have a plan, and that's why we spend so much time training and education the way we do. And then the last part, they are able to concentrate on more complex tasks and more information, and they're able to adapt their own performance as the market changes, as they start to be able to say, maybe I'll try some different strategies. I'll look for some different strategies to see if I like them. That's the autonomous trader. Okay. So these are the stages of skill development that happen here. And I think it's very important that everybody understands that it is a pathway of learning. And I want to absolutely both give grace and encouragement to new traders that when you're making lots of mistakes, we learn from those mistakes. I don't want to call them failures. They're not failures. They're mistakes. They're errors. Or maybe we didn't make any mistakes and it just didn't work out. You need to respect, accept, and give yourself grace that in that early stage, that's what's supposed to happen. And your goal is not to make every trade work. Your goal is to move from a cognitive trader, continue to learn, continue to practice, and now move to a more associative component of now being more consistent, but also knowing and being able to evaluate your own trades and performance and understand where you may have the ability to improve or things that you might do different. And then along the way, the acquisition of skill does not mean that there aren't mistakes, there aren't errors. Back to that golf tournament, there were lots of mistakes and bad shots made by the world's best golfers because of the emotional stress of being the best in the world that year. And an $18 million single tournament payout, you can see the performance weight on them, and they made mistakes. We all will make mistakes. We will never not make mistakes in this world. Never not. That's a double negative. There will never be a time when we are perfect in trading, ever. So I like this. In the cognitive phase, you're learning what to do. And guys, there's a lot of studying, great materials that we have, market corners, online study groups, community pages. I mean, we have so many different ways to touch each other and connect. You're learning what to do as a cognitive trader. The associative trader is, how do I do it? That has to be experiential. And now there's elements of these that connect together. We have to practice, and it's okay to practice with low risk. You're still learning what to do. To me, the how to do it is when we're moving to small money or starting to be in that trading to earn phase. How to do it, really the act of trading to make money in a way that that account value is growing. And then just do it. Now, you can actively be participating in trading with the intent, and you're bridging these two elements, how to do it and doing it. Okay, but I like this, cognitive, what to do, associative, how do I do it? So in the associative phase, for instance, guys, I've had students who could tell me the knowledge, and I say, so have you worked on your brokerage platform and you know how to put in a trade? I'm like, well, no, I haven't worked that yet. Well, you need to be on your brokerage platform. You need to be out there working on how do I push the button. So when it's time to do it, you can do it. I really like this slide. Stages of learning. And this came from a golf course that I took. Time and practice, comfort performance, and thought level. There's new stuff, understanding new stuff, trying new stuff, doing new stuff poorly. What does that sound like? Doing new stuff better. New stuff feels more comfortable. New stuff is almost automatic. Okay. And the more and more we practice, the more and more comfort that we get, and the less and less thought process is needed. Okay. So be patient with yourself. Since it takes time to learn consistency of a new skill set, you got to remain patient during that progress so it can help motivate you that you're in the right phase and help you achieve your learning goals, even if you come across challenges. Trading is a difficult skill, okay? Give yourself time to learn and develop the skill in the proper way. It's not complex. It's just difficult that we need to move through a process of learning and practice and application. I think it's very important you keep a record of your learning. Now, what do I mean here? It's not just a record of your trades. Consider documenting your progress along how you accomplish and the learning objectives that you had. So this is an example of this. When you're going through courses, when you're on an online study group, when you're in a market corner, you need to be writing down the questions as you go through. And then you need to be seeking out those answers either in the course or through a coach or through a market corner every week. We're there to be able to answer those questions to fill in the gap that you have. And keep a record of that learning process, because what's really cool about it, and I experienced this myself, you keep a record of that. Later, you can go back, and as you're reviewing, you're like, oh yeah, I know that. Yep, we're good there. Yep, we're good. All right. Oh yeah, that was really important. I like that. You're reflecting on how much you've learned and how much you've grown in that process, those easy successes. Think about your first class with TRADEway, or the first time you came to a step 1 or a step 2 or whatever course it is. And think about the amount of knowledge that you were exposed to in a short period of time. And then all of a sudden, a year later, If you could see the stack of the workbooks of me going through TRADEway's education, that stack was like 1.5 feet high of just going through the courses over and over and over again to continue to learn. A year later, you're like, wow, look how much I've learned, not necessarily mastered. And now you know what to do in the next steps. So there is an engagement that needs to be there actively on your part. Take advantage of your resources, no doubt. Remember I said that in the cognitive phase, you don't know where the mistakes are, you don't know where the gaps are. You need to use your resources. So TRADEway has structured a phenomenal capacity, okay, in a way that students can have a wide diversity of learning resources. So you have your foundational courses, step 1, 2, 3, 4, workshops, depending on where you're at. All those supplemental home study, what we called home study courses, to kind of just fill in some extra pieces around trading. The market corners, which are every week, are educational in purpose, whereas the online study groups are looking at current stocks in current market conditions, not in a live market, but they're current market opportunities that are being evaluated. The community pages, our TRADEway blog, the ability to be able to learn from each other, including coaches. And then for those of you that are part of that in the community pages, okay, learning from others and the coaches, the live trading hour. Now in the live trading hour, the last hour of every day, they are doing live market activity. So now don't let yourself be overwhelmed. Realize that each of these has a slightly different purpose, and accept that trading education is a continual process, and it's not accomplished in a week or a month. Think more along the lines of 3 to 6 months. Okay, so Doris, I see your question, and if you're a new student, I would say, and even for more experienced students, or do we have a difficult market, a more difficult market right now? Yeah, because we haven't seen a market like this in 15 years. This market won't stay the same, and so it's okay to not feel like you're ready to practice or participate in this market yet, but that doesn't mean you can't roll back. We talk about this, roll back your charts and put yourself in a different time frame, in a different market condition, and practice in that condition so that when things do calm down some, you're prepared by practicing in a different scenario that's less challenging. And that's one of the things I came into trading education with TRADEway at the second year of a bull market. But when you come into trading education right now, you're coming in and learning in a more challenging market. But your goal doesn't need to be trading to earn right now. Your goal should be trading to learn right now. One of the easiest ways is you don't need to learn to trade this market yet. You may want to back up and look at trading. You want to learn, so go back to 2017. If you guys want to learn to trade, practice trading in a consistent trending bull market, go back to 2017 and early parts of 2018, okay? So, and Doris, you kind of said it the last part of this, because right now we don't really have as much of a predictable element as we need to. Now, you'd be surprised on the strategies that do work, and we adapt them. And when you're talking about it, we're talking about on market corners and the online study groups each week. And we're pretty open and transparent about being cautious, being safe, and how we adjust our strategies right now to be in this market. But if you're new to trading, I'm going to say you should spend patiently more time in practicing or learning the information and practicing in some markets that are less chaotic than now. Because jumping in an element, that's kind of like I've played, it's kind of like I'm going to play basketball, and I've played basketball for the last 2 years, and I'm going to step out and I'm going to play basketball with a group of professional basketball players. You're not prepared as well for that situation. But don't do it from a position of fear. Do it from a position that it's more difficult to trade in this market with the volatility. And you can still be part of the market corners and the online study groups and understand what is going on and why it's going on and why we're doing the things we are. But if you're not ready for that yet, that's okay. And that's that process that I'm talking about of people putting the test before their homework. So I really respect and like your question. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Didn't mean that to happen. And then evaluate your skills. And Doris, your question was great for this. One of the most effective ways to develop your new skill sets is to consistently practice and evaluate what you've learned and where you might still need to or want to learn. Doris, this is a great example. Practice your chart pattern skills. Right now, there are not as many clear, consistent, Doris, you said it perfectly right, predictable chart patterns. It's hard to learn consistent, predictable chart patterns when the market's in a little bit more chaos. Now, we can find some charts every once in a while that are pretty consistent. Great. Roll back the charts, go into your charting platform, roll back the charts to 2017, 2019, maybe even up to early part of 2020 before COVID, or actually even COVID hit in March of 2020, even coming into like May, June, July, coming out of COVID. Now roll back, look at patterns. What do they look like? Watch them develop. That's where you can practice that skill set. Mark on those patterns. Guys, do this. Mark the pattern. Take a screenshot. Mark down what you think's happening. How about taking a screenshot of 4 or 5 charts with patterns on them? Touch base with the coach by email and say, can I send you these charts? And then we connect, and I want to say, I want to tell you what I was thinking. I was seeing this pattern. Was I accurate, or do you see some things that I was missing about? Is this a good example of that pattern? You're doing the work, you're doing the homework, you're then sending it to the teacher, the coach, for feedback on were you seeing what you needed to see. That's a practice skill that can be done at any time. Practice setting up, entering, and exiting trades in your brokerage platform. If you're new, I'll bet most of you haven't done this. Literally clicking the buttons. It doesn't have to be connected to a chart in the beginning. This is just practicing the knowledge of the platform. As an example, all right, this has nothing to do with the chart. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go, it doesn't matter that it's Home Depot. This element that I'm showing you doesn't matter at all what the stock is. I'm going to say, I want to buy an option on Home Depot. How do I put in an option trade? Well, I've got to find the option button first. Oh, there it is. By the way, you can't break your charting platform. You can't do anything to it that's going to damage it. So there's the option platform. Okay, now here's this new screen here, and I remember I got to pick the expiration date. And when you've got to that point in your training, you know which expiration date to choose. So I'm just going to choose an expiration date here. Okay. Now here's all this information here and all this noise, and we're trying to show you how to clear the noise. And so okay, I know which option I should be putting the structure on. Again, we're not doing this trade. This is I need to make sure I'm in the right account. I'm in a paper trading account here. Okay, so I come out here and I figure out through the skills or through the knowledge that I have, I work through it. Okay, I think this is the option that I want. Okay, now I've got to remember, how do I do this? All right, so I got to know that I want to, buy one contract. Okay, so I want to buy one contract of this option. And so now I remember that I put the 1 in here. And now what do? How do I execute the trade? And if you don't know, there are resources to go learn. So I come up here and I know that I have to hit the trade button. Okay, so now it's telling me that I want to buy one contract of the November 18, 255 call. It's going to cost me $23.50 by $24.25 bid-ask spread. Okay, but wait, I want to get in the spread, and so I got to remember that I come down here and there's the mid price. Okay, now I can review it, and this all looks good, and I'm in a virtual account, so there's no risk. So I submit the trade, and it says the trade was submitted. And now one of the cool things about charts is I can add a journal note here, and I said that I was practicing, so I don't look at it and think I was trying to trade it. Okay, and I save it. Okay, now what do I do? Because I don't remember, I don't remember, what do I do now? I got a trade on, what do I do? And I have to remember that it's going to be in my positions tab down here. So it takes a few minutes. We're in a trading account, we're in a paper trading account, so I may not have my positions. There's my order status. There's my order that's there. It's live. It hasn't been executed yet. So I have to wait for this to be executed. Okay. So once this is executed, it's going to be here. All right. Now I'm going to turn right back around right now. And I'm going to say, okay, the trade's gone along and it's good to go. How do I exit this trade? Okay. How do I exit this trade? So I want to go back in and I need to do the skill set right now. I don't have to wait 3 days. I can go right back in and go through the practice of executing, closing that trade. Okay. I can cancel this order. My order was successfully canceled. All the skill sets that we need to have as a basic trader inside our platform can be easily done in a practice structure without needing to have the stress of the live market. And then at some point, once you're good to go and your knowledge is there and you're ready to practice and you want it to be a real trade, now you've got the skill sets of working through your brokerage platform. And if you're on a market corner, you can ask a question. I wasn't quite sure how to put in my order in charts, or I wasn't quite sure how to close the trade in charts. That's where you're coming back and getting the resources to reinforce where your gaps are. But you were practicing it, so there's an experiential component to it. And then eventually you put charting and entering and exiting trades together when you're ready to go. So I hope that there was a framework that was here that allowed you guys to see that there is a structure to trading that follows the same pathways as learning any other skill set. And no matter where you're at, there is the ability of simply defining, where am I now? What resources do I need and what things do I need to be working on right now to move to the next level? And giving yourself the grace that this isn't meaning that I need to be in the market risking my financial capital until I have the right skill sets, application, and practice to be able to allow me to manage that risk effectively.